So for this week's assignments, I have decided to combine the two aspects of the assignments this week and combine them in one video rather than writing two different papers. So thank you for giving us an option to have the choice here to write a paper or do an activity of our choice. So I have my notes here to read this week about the theories that we learned. So I learned about environmental education, inquiry-based learning, conceptual change, differentiated instruction, and argumentation. And I'll go ahead and start by saying which one I prefer. I gravitate more towards the differentiated instruction. This instruction was pushed a lot in my undergrad, and it's pushed a lot at the school that I'm currently teaching at. So this is the theory that I am drawn more towards, and I've seen the benefits of this theory. So I was noticing in the different websites that I was looking at differentiated instruction that is primarily used in reading currently, but that it can obviously be used in all subject areas, including science. I can say that I have been guilty of only using differentiated instruction in my reading and then also in my math instruction. It's mainly because I do a lot of whole group science instruction, which I know you can differentiate whole group, but I really like differentiating in small groups. But I really liked in the link that you provided how she said that differentiated instruction is basically just shaking up what goes on in the classroom so that students have multiple options for taking in information and making sense of ideas and expressing what they learn. And I love that saying, just shaking it up, because it's really what it is. The same information is being presented. It's just really catering to those students who are on the higher end, on the lower end, or in the middle end. You really just catering to each and every learner in your class. And there, I really liked that there was a picture that had different animals in it. There was like an elephant, a monkey, snake. I don't remember all the animals, but I really liked that. And it said something along the lines of like, there's a quiz and I need you all to climb the tree, and everyone gets the same exam. And it just gives such a great picture of what differentiation is and how it's so effective in our classroom, because not that our students are elephants and snakes, but that our students are so different, and our students learn so differently, and they all need different kinds of learning presented to them. So that is why differentiation is so important to me. But I also learned this week that the No Child Left Behind that was implemented in 2000 actually pushed differentiation and skill-based instruction. So it's actually being pushed. It's not just an option anymore. Differentiation is really pushed. So that's good. And it really just maximizes learning opportunity for each student and caters to each student's needs. So how differentiation looks in my classroom is a ton of small group instruction. And when I first got started teaching, it was a little bit overwhelming how much small group instruction was needed to really differentiate for each subject level and each student. But, which again, you don't have to do small group to differentiate, but I just really like using small group instruction to differentiate just because it's easier for me. So in the morning time, I do a little bit of whole group instruction for reading, and then we do small group instruction, and that's really where I push my differentiation. And then when we move on to our other subject areas, I do a lot of the little bit of time frame of whole group and then a larger time of small group, just so I can really, I have a parapro in my class, so I'm able to have 2 teacher-led groups. I have 4 groups total. I have a technology group, normally like some sort of reading group or game or interactive group, parapro-led group, teacher-led group. So in those 4 groups, I'm able to change out what the students are doing at each activity. And towards the middle of the year, since I teach kindergarten, that's when the students really get into a routine, and it's really effective, and it gets in a good pattern. But in each group, I do something different, just depending on skill level for each subject. And I haven't really done the best job of doing that in my science instruction, but I would really, really like to start doing that more in my science instruction. I know I've shared a little bit before that my class or my school does not have a big push on science and social studies. So science is really, really put on the back burner in my school. And I found that a little odd when I first started teaching there, just because when I was growing up, science and social studies I didn't notice that it was on the back burner, but it really, truly is, especially in kindergarten. They have such a big push for that reading, especially, and then math, and then science and social studies at the end of the day, if you have time. So it's been hard for me to even get to my science instruction, much less to differentiate and make sure my students are being catered to. But I would really, really, really like to take the opportunity to make the time for my science instruction and really differentiate and make sure my students are getting what they need. So that is my primary theory that I feel fits my classroom style the best. But the other theories that I learned about, one theory was the environmental education. And that is just having the awareness of the issues, of the environmental issues in the classroom, how people interact with them, how they're able to solve them. And a lot of times when I was reading some of the article, it showed that people get confused between environmental science and environmental education because they kind of go hand in hand. One is just the research, and then one is the is how the research is presented, like to the public and to classrooms and stuff like that. So it says that it started in the 18th century by Jean Rousseau. I'm sure I'm butchering that. Who favored education that focused on the environment. He wanted to encourage students to study nature rather than books, which I like that. I just don't think that my classroom is as focused on that. Like, I do tie in some of that. And I think that's what I've learned also in this class, is that you don't have to have just one specific theory in teaching. You can have one that is like the majority, which I believe mine is differentiation, but I feel like that you can also tie in pieces from the other theories as well. And you have to really, in this one, because it says that environmental education is also included in the national and Georgia state standards. So that's great. So another theory that I learned about is the inquiry-based learning, which allows instruction to be based on student questions, which I can go ahead and tell you that my class is not like this at all. But I think it would be so cool to implement this theory in my class. Not all the time, because I think it would stress me out a little bit, but I think doing a little bit of research on these theories has caused me to be a little bit more open-minded about the different theories. But just imagining a class that is where students develop their own questions and they do the research on their own and they find their own answers, and there's a lot of discussion and a lot of student-led discussion and just a lot of student-led lessons because they're the ones that are trying to find the answers. And there's a lot of like project-based learning, which stems from that because students have to research a question and problem to complete a project, and the students learn primarily through interactions with themselves and others. And then the goal of this theory is to allow students to interact naturally and learn from their interactions. So again, I would love to implement some pieces into my classroom, but I just don't see my class ever being like strictly inquiry-based learning. But I would be interested to see what a full day of inquiry-based learning looks like in a classroom. And the next theory that I learned about this week is conceptual change. And that is attempting to reorganize a child's understanding of a topic, a theory, anything really. Which I see the need for this because there's so much preconception around so many things that we're teaching kids, especially even at an early age. You would think that a lot of times we're introducing things to students for the first time, but you'd be surprised about the preconceptions students have on things just from watching TV. So this is something that should occur during the learning process in order for students to be successful. And there are 4 different provisions for children to experience conceptual change. And those are that the information must provide a confusion or dissatisfaction of their existing understanding. So in order to kind of break that preconception, you kind of have to show the students that something is wrong in that preconception for them to have an open mind about changing their conception. So the new information that you present must be clear and it must be reasonable in the student's eyes in order for them to change that conception. So you have to have done a lot of research and make sure you have the facts behind the things that you're going to be teaching them. And also, the students must recognize that the new knowledge can solve problems and it's fruitful. So it has to be understandable to them. So this theory also provides students with feedback and improvement in their learning constantly. However, it's a very time-consuming process, and it will occur at different times for different individuals. So this wouldn't be like a teach every child the same exact conceptual change at the same exact time, because it occurs at different times and students learn differently for that. I already talked about differentiation instruction, and the last one is argumentation. So there are 4 important conceptions that associate with argumentation, and that is considering multiple competing claims, so offering like multiple choice for students, using high quality evidence, focusing on being convincing, and making your reasoning clear. Which to me, this one kind of a little bit goes with conceptual change in my eyes, which I could be wrong, but I just, when I was doing research on both of them, they kind of somewhat seemed similar. So argumentation is aimed at finding relationships between ideas and evidence. It's stimulating learning environment, so you'll see a lot of like problem-based or project-based learning. But teachers, when using this theory, need to set a clear set of instructions, and students should be encouraged to think and ask questions, and there should be a set place for arguments that encourages collaborative reasoning and interaction between students. So yeah, those are the 5 theories that we learned this week. Again, I just took both of the assignments in this Dropbox and just combined them into this video. So that was the reading of my notes that I took over the theories this week, and also what I think a differentiated instruction classroom would look like. Thank you very much.